Welcome to AlexGs Aquarium, everybody. In today's video, I want to give a general system update on the 1600 gallon system, talk about the 480 gallon a bit, the 720 gallon a bit, talk about some equipment stuff that I've been working on. I have the Neptune ATK all set up and hooked up on my RO system, so that's been running auto top off now for about a week, so I can give everybody a little general idea of how I like it so far. And then I want to talk about my Protein Skimmer just a little bit. I've been doing some more modifications to it, and I know the last couple of weeks I've been doing some pretty heavy DIY videos with screen tops and needle wheel impellers, but I wanted to mix things up a little bit this week and do more of a general system update. Matter of fact, just so everyone's aware, I do work ahead a little bit when I can. The DIY needle wheel impellers have been assembled. I got two different styles of them. One that I'm using here is what's in use already, and this other one, which is more of a standard needle wheel, I made that as well, but I never got the chance to test it out because I ran out of materials the first time I built them. With that, let's jump into the status of the 1600 gallon system and how it's been performing the last few weeks as far as water quality goes. I've not done any water changes on this system yet. I've added a few 5-gallon buckets of salt water here as I take stuff out for either for cleaning purposes, water testing, or adding new livestock to the tank. Right now, my pH is running right around 8.0 to 8.1. The big news is my alkalinity has finally dropped down to more of an acceptable level. It had been hovering in the 8.5 to 8.9 range for quite a while, but it's finally starting to drop down. It actually hit the 8.0 to 7.7 mark on my Salifert kit, and I went ahead and actually dosed some alkalinity for the first time just to keep it bumped up a little bit. I know that there's stuff utilizing it because there is coralline algae that's starting to grow in the Refuge Tank, and both displays. I'm very happy about that. I always see that as a really good sign. My calcium's still really high. It's at 480 right now. So there's no need to dose any kind of calcium products. My phosphate and nitrate have also been getting tested every week or two, and they're still remaining at 0. There's a ton of macroalgae growing in the refugium tank. I'm going to take you guys back there in a second. We'll talk about that. And my salt, depending on what I test it with, my refractometer is reading about 25.5, and then the Tropic Marin floating hydrometer is reading just a little bit higher. It's reading like a 26-27 range. I still tend to go back to my refractometer. It's still reading 0 with RODI water. I'll probably pick up some calibration solution eventually too, just to double check it, but I'm still bracketed in a good place between 25 and 27 between the two of them. I'm fine with that. I know that it's appropriate. All the animals are doing great in here. Things are responding well to the conditions in which they're in. Let's talk a little bit about livestock now. And I know you might have seen it already, and yes, I did. I have purchased my first coral. It's in the tank right behind me. If you don't see it, it's right there. Well, there it is. My first coral in the 480 gallon tank. And it's a bubble coral. One of the very first corals that I ever purchased for a reef aquarium period was a bubble coral, along with a Wesleyphilia and frog spawn. You can see I also added 3 Banggai cardinals into the tank. Bubble corals in general like very low flow, and they tend to do better in a little bit lower light. That's why this third of the tank right here in front of you is going to be dedicated more for LPS. I plan to put a couple of gyres up on the top right of the tank and have them blow across. But any additional water flow that I put in the tank, I'm going to keep it front to back down a ways. And for corals such as a bubble coral that don't want to be beaten to death with flow, I'll use rocks or other structures to make sure that they're not getting beaten to death with water flow. It's a really beautiful coral. If you've never had a bubble coral, I highly recommend them if you like LPS corals and you have a nice low flow area. They're really beautiful. You could feed them once a week, twice a week, whatever you decide to do. but they're real easy going. The biggest thing you want to watch out for them when you purchase them though is make sure that their polyp is not torn against the skeleton. If you see any of the skeleton sticking out from the polyp, it'll be bright white. It's a very sharp skeleton. It'll be sticking out. If you see that, I wouldn't be in favor of purchasing that coral myself. I will say though that this one here, you do have them on occasion do have a die back and then come back even stronger. So right in the center of the screen there, you'll see you can't really see, but underneath the main polyp there's actually a baby that is growing out of a dead head of the bubble coral. So another really cool addition to the tank. I couldn't resist. It's been in the store for a couple of months and I just could not help myself from picking this beautiful coral up. As far as everything else goes in the tank, all the royal grommas have been doing really well. I have only added one other fish to this tank, and that's a long-nosed hawkfish. My cigar wrasse is still in here. It's a little early for him though, so he's probably still asleep. And the 4 cleaner shrimp I have are really looking nice too. Well, the 720 gallon tank is also doing really well. All the fish have been getting along pretty good. Every now and then the flame angel will push his weight around a little bit. He seems to be the big guy in charge in the tank right now. I'd add green bird wrasse to the tank. They had one at the store that had been there for a while, and he was eating pretty well. They're a little shy at first when they get added to the tank. He's been a great addition though, and he's not super large either. He just seems to kind of mind to himself. The other wrasses in here don't even seem to notice him. The little clown trigger's been doing good. He's just a ferocious little guy when it comes to getting food. Overall, all of the fish here have been doing great. I have the Neptune ATK installed right here. It's hooked up to the single 100-gallon tank. It's just on a piece of PVC that's hanging down that I use for water circulation inside the tank. Thus far, I did run a separate piece of RO style tubing to the other side. It does come with a little anti-siphon on it, so even though that this tank is much higher than my sump tank, I haven't had any instances where it's been trying to back siphon this freshwater tank into my reef yet. So that's been working good. That was one concern I had. Initially I was going to run it into this line here, which is what I use for just manual pumping of water into the system. It hasn't been necessary yet. There have been a few instances where it has gone into alarm. I'm not sure why. If it's just the pump was either pumping too long, or if there was something else that it was sensing. I know if it runs too long as well, that could be an issue. And the first time I tested it, I let it try to pump in about a week's worth of auto top off, and it didn't like that. But even in a week, I only evaporate about 20 gallons off of this system right now, and it's not that big of a deal. As a matter of fact, it just kicked on and I didn't even tell it to. So it's working pretty good. I have it set up in the 120 gallon sump tank. That's the final stage. The float switch is in line with it as well. So far, other than a few errors, which I've just unplugged it and plugged it back in, it seems to be working okay. I will report on it in the next few weeks after I get a little bit better feel for it and understand if it's working for me or if I have any kind of problems with it. Let's check out the Protein Skimmer. My favorite subject, the Protein Skimmer. How's the Protein Skimmer been running? Well, I just cleaned it, so it's been running pretty good. It hasn't really gotten a whole lot in the way of skimmate up into the collection cup, which is still okay because the fact is there really isn't a whole lot in the way of bio load here. The handful of fish in each one of those tanks is not a whole heck of a lot. But I will say though, when I scrape off the interior of this every week, it has been pretty messy and getting a pretty thick layer of skimmate in there, which is good. It's nice and dry skim. I don't want to be pulling a ton out. I did make some modifications. I raised up the drain line on here. I also restricted it and put a 2-inch to 1-inch restrictor on it, which has helped to push the flow higher in here. I also control the water flow with this gate valve, which is the other 2-inch line that just goes into the filter sock tray. By doing a restriction here and a little restriction here, I'm able to kind of control my water flow in the skimmer I can only bring it up so high before I hit the top of where it's going to be. Ultimately, I think with a few more adjustments and more bio load coming in, it's not going to be a problem. I will be adding a second pump to it, which should also be an interesting experiment for this as well, to see if it kind of overwhelms everything, or if adding that extra air injection helps to drive it properly. Stay tuned on this, more coming. Next couple of weeks will probably be a DIY needle wheel video, and ultimately I'll do an installation video on this. Let's talk about the Refugium tank. I want to take a minute here just to look at the Refugium tank. As you can see, I am loaded up with pods in here. Every one of those white dots on the glass is a pod of some form. There's about 30 different species of macroalgae in here that I've been counting. The only one I've added thus far has been the Chado. I will be adding a couple more next week, hopefully, if they come in. But overall, everything is just looking awesome in this tank. There'll definitely be more to talk about the Refuge tank here in the next few weeks, because it is just jamming and doing great. That's the update on the 1600 gallon system. As always, if you like today's video, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. Let me know if you like today's video. If you dislike it too, that's alright. Not a problem. Of course, if you have comments or questions on the 1600 gallon system, please feel free to leave them in the comment section down below. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions and comments that come up there. I try to be as active as I can. And if you have anything in the system that you want me to specifically talk about, go ahead and leave that down in the comments below. Of course, if you want to see more on the 1600 gallon system and some of the DIY projects I've been working on every week, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. As always, everybody, thanks again for watching, and I will see you on the next video.